Organization of Afro-American Unity sees the only hope for the black man in America in a strong Africa, and the necessity of the Afro-American becoming inseparably linked with the overall program that's existing on the African continent. The two problems must be solved together, and the two forces must go forward together. And so the Organization of Afro-American Unity has a program to link the Afro-Americans with the Africans and the Africans with the Afro-Americans. When I say Afro-Americans, I mean those throughout the entire Western Hemisphere. This is our only hope. Our hope is in a strong Africa. And when Africa is strong, our position in America will be one of respect. But if Africa is weak, we will never be in a position of respect in America.
Wait a minute. American descendants of slaves are demanding reparations from the American government? Are you serious? Why them? What makes them so special? Why do they think their cause is more deserving than others? And why are they always looking for handouts anyway? Are they even really suffering or just being lazy? Come on, are they actually out there in the fields today picking cotton? The solution to all this nonsense is very simple actually. They should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps like the rest of us. Now, I know you have all probably heard a variation of these arguments, and that you probably align yourselves with one or several of them. So far, this has been a heated debate taking place amongst Americans who, on the whole, have dismissed the very notion of reparations payments as a non-starter. But what do we Africans make of all this? Should African descendants of slaves in the US be compensated for the 400 plus years their ancestors endured the horrors of slavery and the racial discrimination they faced to date? Should we Africans feel any moral obligation to support their cause? Many will argue that this is an American domestic problem and that it has nothing to do with us. Others will point out that we have more than enough problems of our own here in Africa. But let us pause for a moment to reflect on the role that African Americans have played in our own cause of fighting for liberation from colonial rule in Africa. Let us reflect on how, for centuries, they stood with us in some of the darkest moments of our history, and let us also remember exactly how they did just that in the following historical events. Number one, in 1893, in what is known as the Chicago Conference on Africa, Black Americans met to formulate a public policy on how to liberate Africa from colonialism. In a follow-up conference in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1895, it was the very same agenda of liberating Africa that dominated the discussions amongst the delegates. The seeds of Black consciousness that was sown in these meetings would later transform into an international Pan-African movement comprising Black Americans, West Indians, and continental Africans. Number two, in 1900, Henry Sylvester Williams, a London-based Black lawyer from Trinidad, organized a conference in London that laid the foundation for what would become a series of international Pan-African congresses. One of the key resolutions of the 32 delegates at the meeting was an appeal to European powers to grant self-rule to their African colonies. This gathering of Black people from across the world ushered in a sense of unity and spirit of Pan-Africanism that would only increase with time. Number three, it was the Pan-African Congress organized by the civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois in 1919 that brought world attention to the Pan-Africanists and their determination to fight for Africa. The conference was well attended by over 60 delegates from 16 countries, including members from the NAACP and other Black American activists. Once again, freeing Africa from colonial rule was at the top of their agenda. Taking advantage of the ongoing Versailles Peace Conference that was being held by European powers after World War I, The Pan-African Congress delegates demanded that the world leaders consider the importance of Africa in the future world they were creating. They also demanded that the Versailles Peace Conference give the Negro race of Africa a chance to develop unhindered by other races, quote unquote. Needless to say, their demands were ignored by the white power elites gathered in Versailles. All the same, a sense of deep collective responsibility for liberating Africa emerged from the delegates at the Pan-African Congress. This collective responsibility led to more conferences in 1921 in Brussels and in 1923 in London and Lisbon. Number 4. It was the 1945 conference in Manchester that proved to be the landmark historical event for the Pan-African movement. Organized by George Padmore and Kwame Nkrumah, the conference was attended by a record number of African scholars and political activists who would later lead their countries to independence. These included Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, Hastings Banda of Malawi, and Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. The most important decision at this conference was that, having exhausted all peaceful means for achieving independence, the use of military force was henceforth an option for African liberation movements. The direct consequence of this acceptance of the use of force to gain liberation from colonial rule led to wars of independence in Kenya, Mozambique, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. In addition, mass demonstrations occurred in Ghana, Congo, Nigeria, and Zambia. It is worth emphasizing that throughout this new phase of the struggle, Black Americans and other members of the African diaspora offered Africans their unwavering support in freeing themselves from European domination. Number 5. Other Black-dominated American organizations such as the American Committee on Africa, ACOA, not only campaigned for the anti-colonial cause, but provided substantial assistance to African liberation movements and newly independent countries. ACOA also offered American scholarships to future African leaders such as Tom Mboya of Kenya and Oliver Tambo of South Africa. Number 6. The invasion of Ethiopia by Italy in 1935 galvanized Black Americans' sense of unity with Africans like never before. Believing that the invasion was rooted in racism, Black intellectuals, grassroots community organizers, and religious groups formed alliances, mobilized resources, and protested the American government's non-involvement policy. In taking all this action, Black Americans understood the Italian invasion of Ethiopia as an extension of the ongoing struggle for emancipation of Black people everywhere. Are you enjoying this video? Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Number 7. The role of American Black churches in the anti-colonial struggle in Africa was critical but has often been overlooked. In fact, it was the voice of Black religious leaders and their members that provided the moral courage to sustain the anti-colonial campaign in the US. The churches also provided other forms of support, such as in Harlem, where the churches provided financial support to organizations like ACOA and hosted some of their activities. Several churches also publicly supported Ethiopia during the 1935 invasion by Italy. Number 8. Black universities in the US, also known as historically Black universities and colleges, HBCUs, also played an important role in supporting Africa's quest for independence. After the abolition of slavery, HBCUs started offering scholarships to Black students from Africa and the Caribbean. Over time, these colleges became melting points of Black solidarity from across the world and centers of debate about the emancipation of the Black race from white domination in the US and overseas. For example, while studying at Lincoln University, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana came to better understand the struggle of Black Americans in the US. Number 9. Apart from the activities of the HBCUs as institutions, black student organizations in the US, such as the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, SNCC, offered support to the African movements fighting for independence in the 1960s. They initiated various programs for raising awareness about the anti-colonial cause and in some cases even traveled to Africa to offer political support and to raise awareness about black consciousness. Number 10. The admirable role that black Americans played in bringing to an end the apartheid system in South Africa is well known and well documented. I need not rehash it here. But perhaps these sentiments expressed in 1965 by Martin Luther King Jr. in his call for an international boycott of apartheid South Africa sums up the emotions of the entire black American community at the time. For the American Negro, there is a special relationship with Africa. It is the land of his origin. It was despoiled by invaders. Its culture was arrested and concealed to justify white supremacy. The American Negro's ancestors were not only driven into slavery, but their links with their past were severed, so that their servitude might be psychological as well as physical. In this period, when the American Negro is giving moral leadership and inspiration to his own nation, he must find the resources to aid his suffering brothers in his ancestral homeland. Nor is this aid a one-way street. The civil rights movement in the United States has derived immense inspiration from the successful struggles of those Africans who have attained freedom in their own nations. The fact that black men govern states, are building democratic institutions, sit in world tribunals, and participate in global decision-making gives every Negro a needed sense of dignity. Now, here's the painful truth that as Africans, we may not want to accept. Africa has betrayed black Americans far too many times. Let me remind you of one of the most painful moments of this betrayal. Soon after the formation of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, Malcolm X attended its conference in Cairo, Egypt, where he was given an opportunity to present the cause of black Americans. Now, let us bear in mind that the OAU members he was addressing were the newly independent countries that he and other black Americans had helped liberate. He reminded the delegates how the plight of the Jewish people from across the world was being discussed at the United Nations General Assembly while the suffering of black Americans was being ignored. He therefore appealed to African leaders to address their plight in a similar manner. Although some resolutions were passed at the OAU and 9 countries accepted to take up the matter at the United Nations, they failed to do so. This generation of Africans must not fail black Americans again. We have an expression in Swahili known as kurudisha mkono, which means to repay kindness. Even if we had no other reason as Africans to support the cause for reparations, let us repay the kindness that American descendants of slavery have shown Africa for centuries. Thank you, viewers, for watching this video. I hope it has provided some food for thought on this very important topic. If it met your expectations, please support this channel by liking and subscribing. And look out for more videos on Africa and the African diaspora.